everyone, this is Myf, your life and performance coach, and welcome to the Actually You Can podcast. Actually You Can is more than just a fun phrase to say. It's a philosophy of limitless potential, a mindset, an attitude, a conviction. Most importantly, it's about to make you achieve what you might never have thought possible. On this show, we'll discuss strategies for growth for ambitious individuals looking to achieve big things and live a thriving, fulfilled life. You'll hear from inspiring guests who will share their journeys, challenges, and lessons learned. And I'll be sharing insights and actionable takeaways from my aligned results framework that will help you to align your goals, mindset, and strategies to reach your highest potential. Be sure to hit subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to so you can easily find this podcast again and stay updated with new episodes dropping every week. In today's episode, we're joined by Dr. Lynn Carey, a chiropractor of over 18 years of experience and the author of My Journey to Grace. Dr. Carey shares her personal journey from depression to finding joy and grace. We'll delve into the essential steps to create the life you desire and discuss how you can begin your own journey towards living that life today. Let's jump in. Hi, Lynn. Welcome to the show. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Liv, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
And we're going to talk about the topic of creating your desired life. And I'm so excited to dive into this with you today. But before we do that, I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself with the listeners. Who is Dr. Lynn Carey?
Yeah, so I always go back to when I was a teenager, just briefly so people understand where my healing journey started. And I was diagnosed with scoliosis and I ended up having spinal surgery. And it left me sick and in pain for years. And I was very depressed as a kid, and this just accentuated it. I don't know actually which came first, like the chicken or the egg, because I do believe there's an emotional component behind every disease. But I just knew there had to be more to life. And so having this surgery, I just was, nobody could really help me. And I discovered chiropractic in college. And it was the pamphlet on chiropractic that said the power that made the body heals the body. It was the first time I heard truth, and it just resonated with me. And I just went to chiropractic school. I didn't even get adjusted. I went on the philosophy, and it just began my journey. It changed my life. It wasn't like overnight, but it changed my life. And it just started I believe it wasn't just becoming a chiropractor. It was just started my spiritual journey as well.
That sounds incredible. And I love that quote, the power that made the body heals the body. And I'd love for you to talk more about that, because I feel like that is, as you mentioned, it's a really strong philosophy that really underpins your journey. Can you share more about your relationship with that quote and how that potentially has evolved since you started your study and since you learned more about chiropractic?
Yeah, that's really a great question. I don't think anybody had asked it like that before. Because I do believe that chiropractic is a metaphor for life. We had a whole different orientation on how to look at actually how the body works. I saw that regular medical practice, they always were looking for an outside in cure, like to give a drug or to cut it out. Whereas when I started looking at the chiropractic philosophy, we recognized that there was an inner wisdom, an innate intelligence that is always running the body. It's always making itself new. I mean, as we sit here, all our organs are working, and we couldn't consciously control that if we tried. So it's like, well, what is your body trying to tell you when you have symptoms? It's better to let it run its course, allow the body to do what it has to do. And I would adjust the spine just to clear any, stuck areas that were putting pressure on the nervous system, because that would interfere with how the brain communicated to the body to allow the life force or that inner wisdom to come forth at 100%. That's what would be an alignment, right? Or an adjustment. But I realized, it's really learning to listen to that inner wisdom too, to guide you in your whole life, to really live your dreams and to express your soul. And I believe it's when we don't do that is when people were getting stuck in chronic symptoms or in disease states. So I saw that as such a correlation.
And it's so interesting, right? Because I'm not sure what the system's like in America, but I definitely know here in Australia, you grow up learning about
science and biology and the human body and the anatomy and all that sort of stuff. And I grew up in a family where both parents were in the medical profession in some capacity. And so definitely growing up with science and the external modalities of treatment, healing the body was definitely alive and well in my upbringing. And it was only I went through a journey myself where I started becoming more curious about how the body worked, how the mind worked, that I discovered yoga, Reiki, and all those beautiful modalities. And I remember one of my parents distinctively saying, "Oh, you'll get over that sort of stuff," because they're so grounded in the science behind everything. What's your relationship between, I guess, the traditional science and the other alternative modalities like chiropractic, like acupuncture, and all those modalities that there is just so much evidence that there is incredible healing and transformation that can occur from these modalities? What's your view on the relationship between these two?
I think I've had a unique perspective because I had about 5 years where, the medical world really caused a lot of my problems because I would not choose that surgery today, knowing what I know. Not that I would change it
Yeah.
because it became one of my greatest gifts of an awakening, but it doesn't make sense, especially from a chiropractic point of view and understanding to have that kind of surgery. And
Yeah.
then I would go and I kept getting sick. And it wasn't just like pain, it was also like strep throat. I got the chicken pox. Like my immune system was so suppressed. And I remember asking the medical doctors, why do I keep getting sick? And they said, well, let's just write you a stronger prescription. They never had an answer. And I used to think they don't know. They don't know. When I got to chiropractic school and saw this whole other way of looking at the body, which made more sense, and it relieved me of my fear that I couldn't get better. And I believe it was the combination of getting the body work, the adjustment, so I could get reconnected with my energy in my body, changing my mindset, losing my fear, that the healing started to happen. And it wasn't like it was a quick fix. It was a journey. It was up and down. I'd feel better and then I'd feel worse. So being okay with that process, understanding that process. So, and at the same time, I'm in chiropractic school learning the sciences, right? I'm learning what the medical people learn because we have to pass 4 medical boards to get our license, become a doctor, right? And then I'm learning the chiropractic adjustment, the art of the adjustment, the philosophy, having my own experience. And I realized that science is human error. Like a lot of it is, what does the person believe that's influencing how this science results comes out? Who's buying the results? Who's paying for? A lot of that, there's a lot of influence. So for me, I just feel like we don't know as humans. It's so much bigger than us. I don't know. I can't tell you how the body works. I mean, I think we try to rationalize it. We try to fit it into our small human mind. So I'm not really a science person. It kind of, I feel like it disproved itself to me. If you need that, that's great. Because it's funny because I do believe have you ever heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yes. Yes, I have.
He is a chiropractor and he's very into science, right? So all his work is trying to prove scientifically how all this stuff that people are calling woo-woo is actually scientifically backed. And I think that's amazing because some people's minds work that way. For me, I don't need it, but it's there. I think they're actually proving it in that respect. So that's just kind of my 2 cents there with all of that.
And I love that you mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza because that's how I learned more about it, because I needed the science initially because of my upbringing. That's how I could justify it and it made sense. And as I've gone on to learn more and experience more importantly, I think I've been able to simply believe in the reality of transformations. I don't necessarily need to understand the ins and outs to know that something has worked. For example, I don't need to know how my internet works to know that I'm connected on the internet to you right now. And so I'm very much, if something is getting me results, then that's evidence enough for me to believe that something is there. And there are options. So if traditional medicine isn't working for you, or if a different modality is not working for you, there are so many different modalities out there now that if you continue to look, you'll be able to find something that works for you. And that's what I hope to share with a lot of people with interviewing incredible guests as yourself, is there's always different ways to view situations, address different problems. And if you haven't found one that works for you, keep looking because there is something out there.
Even trying to find a chiropractor that's right for you might not fit with everybody. I think you can go into 10 different chiropractors and have 10 different experiences. And that comes down to learning to listen to yourself and following your own intuitive voice and guidance that, okay, listen to the message or listen to what this person, listen to feel the resonance. That's when you know it's an alignment for you, which you and I may get two different experiences with different things. And that's beautiful. That's the variety, the choices that should be honored.
I love that you've said that. And yes, we're human. So we're going to have different experiences. That's just the nature of it. And I definitely also love that you mentioned that we could go to 10 different chiropractors and get 10 different experiences. And I think that's important to note too, because I have had friends who have tried a particular modality before and like, oh, it's just not for me. Like, maybe give it a second chance with a different practitioner or in a different environment because you will get a different experience.
Definitely.
And so I love that you support people to live their desired life. And so I'd love for you to share, what does living a desired life mean for you?
Yeah. So I really saw while I was in practice that every area of a life affects every area of your life. And I saw that people really weren't connecting the dots on that. Maybe more so now. I think it's talked about more now, but this is 20 years ago, and I saw that if they would come in and say, "Oh, this pain just happened," or "This symptom just happened," and I would ask, "Are you more stressed out than others?" And "Oh no, everything's fine." And then they would tell me about their day, and I was stressed out just listening to it. But that became their norm. Of course, their body is going to break down because they're not stopping to evaluate or to make. They're not making a decision or a change. They're not acknowledging the pain that they're living. So your body will break down to get you to listen, to stop, to reevaluate. So there's a gift in that, right? So I saw, if you're going to a job that you hate every day, that's not normal. It can be temporary, but you should have a plan B, you know? And I also just started looking at every area of my life. I didn't know how to run a business. I opened up a practice on principle and passion, and I didn't know anything about business or money. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and that kind of changed my whole life on looking at money. But just like chiropractic changed my life on health. And I realized everybody should be financially free, not living in the rat race where you're constantly trading time for money and you don't have choices. Because those choices affect how you choose how you take care of your body, how you spend your day, the foods that you eat. I mean, it's all so intertwined. It's so important. And I know now, especially being on this journey, figuring things out for myself, trying to pull myself out of the mainstream matrix that everybody tells you is normal. We're here to live our passion. We're here. If you have a dream in your heart, that's your soul's journey. It might not be easy to get there. You might hit every roadblock possible, but that's the gift because they're the things that you're supposed to work on, like the limiting beliefs, the fears that you have. They'll show up in that soul's journey of working towards your dream in order to be transformed. And that's truly moving the energy in your body and your mind. That is fully having life force flow through your body. That's what I wanted to do as a chiropractor, is adjust people so they had full life force, right? But I realized people had to do the inner work. You got to look at your mindset. You have to look at relationships. Are they draining you or are they uplifting you? Are you going to a job that you feel passionate about or are you dreading it? I mean, it's important to address this. I think people accept the ho-hum of life, that's the norm. But that's what's killing us.
And what's coming out for me when you mentioned that is I remember reading about a concept called the mere exposure effect. And essentially what that means is the longer that you're exposed to a situation, the more normal it becomes, even though it might not be an ideal situation. And that's what's coming to mind when I'm hearing you talk about that. It's like we go to a job that we might not love, but after time, we just convince ourselves this is what we need to do, or we convince ourselves after a while, it's actually not that bad. And it's really sad to see because to your point, I honestly believe as well that when we're meant for more than just to work for a paycheck. And sure, the paycheck can enable things, really great things to happen outside of life. But for a lot of people, they spend their time at work and then they're too tired to do all those things they enjoy outside of work. And so I really love that you've mentioned the commitment to helping people to live more than just through the ho hum of day to day.
And I do believe if you come up against whether it's a diagnosis that you don't like, a disease label, or some kind of financial problems or a relationship problem, I want to give people hope that that could be the most empowering thing that could ever happen to you. Don't be afraid to dive in deep and figure out. It might not be easy. It might not be comfortable. It's not that it won't, you might not experience pain, but if you're able to really navigate and get to the bottom of it, and you can transform it, and it can be the greatest light in your life, like the greatest gift. Because I went through years of so much pain and suffering with my body, but now I'm so free health wise. I don't have the fears that people live in and the stuff they do with their body and their health and trying to maintain it. It's the great, I feel so blessed. So I always tell people sometimes your hardest, darkest hour can be the greatest light if you have the courage to go through it. A lot of people are afraid to start because they're afraid to face those dark things, right? Even like when we were talking about what's normal, sometimes we didn't have our childhoods. What was normal really wasn't the healthiest. But a lot of people are afraid to explore that pain because they think it's going to consume them. But really, if you have the courage to be with the pain, you can free yourself and really be free of that and see the gift in it and see what lessons and what you gained from it. There's always something. So that's why I always encourage people, don't be afraid to start something new or to really reevaluate or look at things because there's a blessing in it.
Yeah, and that's so lovely. And I love that you mentioned the emotion of fear. And I definitely see that as a really strong emotion that holds people back from doing this sort of work. And in your experience, why do some people go, yes, I'm meant for more in this world than working a 9 to 5 or living a mediocre life? And some people are happy doing that. I mean, I shouldn't use the word happy. I'm not sure if they actually are happy, maybe just content, or they're willing to accept that life. What do you think is the difference between those two people?
I've been asking myself that a lot because I don't know. I don't know what holds some people back. And I think, what does fear represent? Could it mean a death of something? The only thing because I almost feel like I have fear, but I have more fear of not doing the thing. I've definitely played
Yeah.
my life full out. Has it worked out perfectly? No, definitely not. But I mean, I've got so much wisdom in the down part. I mean, it was part of the journey. It was kind of an exciting life. But my dad died when I was young, when I was 12. And I really felt like he got to a better place than I did. I felt like we were here. This was like hell on earth. Like, that's how I felt growing up. I just thought there's got to be more to life. My family just worked all the time. I didn't see much happiness or joy. And I was like, what is the purpose of all this? There still wasn't enough. It was like this. I'm like, well, what am I doing here? And then when my dad died, I really believe, it was cancer, but I believe he had broken dreams. He failed as an entrepreneur many times, money issues, especially as a man. That's hard when you have a family, you know, they're not quick to reach out emotionally for help. And he had to go to a job that he hated. And I really believe his life force was just drained. He didn't have the right mentorship to help him through that. But when he died, I just felt like he was there with me still. I just felt like he changed forms. And I feel like his death gave me the greatest gift because I didn't have a fear of death. I thought if I die, I have a parent in heaven and I have a parent here on earth. And I think he's in a better place. I don't know what we're doing here, but I just felt that peace. I felt peace with death. And I think it allowed me to play full on out. I believe that's the gift that his death gave me. I don't have the fear to fail. I mean, of course you have the fear, but not to the point where you don't do anything. Because I watch people not make a move, make excuses, still whatever, be busy. That's the key. Everybody's busy. So busy, I can't get to it. That's an excuse. I've never done that. I've always made time to work on my dreams. Or I always had the vision. I've always had the awareness that let me do these steps. They're going to help me get to my dream. It might not happen right away, but I know I'm working towards it. And I don't see that with a lot of people. And I'm curious. I don't know where the fear holds people back. And that's the only perspective that I have, the death thing. Because it's a death of your old self, right? Staying comfortable because they're afraid of not knowing. Well, I guess because I had to face that young, maybe it took some of that away from me.
Yeah. And what a beautiful perspective. I really appreciate that you shared the story about your dad. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think for a lot of people, in my experience with clients, if they're not willing to change, I found it's often because they're afraid of the death of their current identity, or they're afraid of what their new identity is because they haven't been that person yet. So they're afraid of what's going to happen if they actually start going after their dreams. Like, holy crap, what if I go after this and it's everything I could have imagined? Or what if I go after it and it's actually not what I wanted? I feel like there's a couple of different elements of fear coming up there. What's your view on that perspective?
I can agree with you. I think that was well said. Definitely. It is the fear of the unknown. It is staying in that comfort zone. I guess I've never been comfortable enough to stay. I knew there
Mm,
could be more. And I think that's the gift that chiropractic gave me because I was struggling with my health so bad and I got better after no one could help me
yeah.
because I figured it was a bigger perspective. And I knew there had to be a bigger perspective in other areas. It gave me the courage to say, oh, there's other ways of looking at life, money, relationships, how you spend your time. I was just open at that point because chiropractic, it became so much better on the other side. And I also didn't have a choice because nothing was working. I could take a painkiller. It wasn't even working. That's how bad the pain was. I had no choice. I could get adjusted. It didn't fix me right away. I had to sit with the pain. I didn't have a choice. So I don't fear that as much. And maybe that was the gift in that.
Yeah. And it sounds like the situation was that's horrible, for lack of a better term, for you, that it almost forced you to adopt a growth mindset and for options. That's another thing I often see with people is they don't see any other ways to do things. What's your view on that?
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. That has to be the wiring. They don't see another way to do things. That's well said. I actually agree with you on that. Because I saw another way to do things, right? So that gave
Yeah.
me the courage to move forward and other things. So if people haven't had that experience, it must be more comfortable to stay in the zone of what you know.
Yeah. And looking at living a desired life, I'm interested to hear your perspective on it. I get a lot of people come to me and go, yes, I want to live a life that lights me up, that is so richly fulfilling, but I have no idea what I enjoy or what I want. Do you experience similar with clients? And if so, how do you support them?
So I think one of the easiest, this is something so easy. I love to write things down. I've always been a big journaler. And I think pen to paper is very therapeutic. It works your brain in a creative mode. I think if you just take pen and paper and write out what what would I want my life to look like, you know? Even just writing that question out. Okay, I think people know. I think a lot of people are afraid to admit what they want because they think it's impossible.
Mm.
So I always say, regardless if you think it's impossible, write out every inspiration that comes to you. And maybe just start with sometimes a great way to get started if you feel blocked is make a list of gratitude, things that you're grateful for throughout your day. The sun came out. I can breathe today. I took a walk or I saw a cute dog or I don't know. I enjoyed my cup of coffee, something, little things. Write down that where you felt peace, bliss, inspiration, and then write down things that you felt inspired or that you enjoyed because it starts to make you orient yourself towards those things instead of always looking at the problem and what you have to fix because that just creates more of it. If you start orienting yourself with the blessings, what you appreciate, inspiration, more of that's going to flow to you. And then all of a sudden, you're going to have all these ideas of what your life could look like. Write them down. You don't have to figure out how to do it. Just getting it on paper is so powerful because then you have to be open to the next step, the next inspiration. Eventually, the dots are going to start to connect, I believe, or things are going to happen where you're bringing in the right person, the right book, the right podcast that gives you a bigger picture to that idea you had. That's how it works. We just have to be open to it.
And I've never had anyone mention and I've had the pleasure of interviewing so many incredible people on this show. And not one time have I heard someone mention to look at gratitude when looking at what's important to you and what you desire. So thank you for sharing that. Added another tool to my toolbox. I think that's really beautiful.
Can I just share? But I had an awakening experience in 2001 when I was in practice for 3 years. I was doing a lot of mission work. I did mission work in Brazil and India, and I really believed it got me really in tune with energy flow, my own my own body work that I was receiving was getting more fine tuned. I was getting really sensitive to light touch body work. I was working on a lot of people. And eventually I went into this state that I called my grace state, the bliss state. And it lasted for about 18 months. And the only way I can describe it is it's like if you fall in love, you know how you get the butterflies and everybody looks for that high when you meet somebody. But there was no other person involved. It was just me, myself, and I. Like it was my natural state. And I really believe that is our natural state. I believe that's what everybody's searching for. We are meant to live in that higher vibrational state. Society has dumbed us down to accept lower frequencies. And that's why we struggle with depression, anxiety, creating, living in a life that's not in a natural state, not a desired life, right? So it's not that, people can go buy the house, right? Buy the new car, and then it doesn't fulfill them because they're looking for the inner, that inner space that's there. So I believe by really, you can't force it, right? I can't say why mine came on when it did, but I've learned to nurture it, and I've learned to make that my norm. Not that I don't have anger, fear, things that come up, but I don't stay there. It's able to kind of move through, or I'm aware when I'm there. And I realize my normal state is the higher vibration, and I can tell when I'm out. It's just not as comfortable. So that's why I think it's important to journal and to get into what inspires you, not that what you think you should have. I want to be financially free, not because the money doesn't buy me happiness, but it gives me choices. I want to choose how I spend my day and do what I want when I want. That's my definition of financial freedom. I don't care what the amount is. The amount of money might be different for everyone. So I think sometimes we get stuck in what success looks like, but it's really, if you can honor that inner voice, you're more likely to align to that inner space, that higher vibrational state. That's where the gratitude, the appreciation, that is our natural state. When you can align to that kind of joy, when you really start feeling peace in the present moment, then and create your life from there. That's so powerful.
I've written down aligning to your inner voice. I really love what you've shared in that. And as soon as you mentioned that you entered that bliss state and you felt that for about 18 months, I was like, oh, I need to learn the secret. How did you do that? So I'm assuming it's not I did 1, 2, 3 steps and I got into that bliss state. Maybe it is. If it is, I would love to hear it, but I'd love to learn more about that bliss state. What factors do you think contributed to that? And the extent of it and how long it went for, and you mentioned it lasted for a period of about 18 months. What happened at that 18-month period?
Yeah, I feel like I was just I wasn't working on a project. I was just living in the bliss vibe. I was having my practice, but I wasn't working on a goal. I think in that 18-month point, I really dove into applying what I was learning with the Rich Dad Poor Dad. I started doing real estate investing on the side and doing those things. So it wasn't that I dropped out of the state, but I started to integrate the state with actually applying it in life, because I realized I found the inner state, but I realized my outside life wasn't set up from this higher place. There were things that I felt limiting and I needed to grow. But I wasn't afraid to try or face my fears and explore outside of where my box was at that point. So I think and really there's a gift in that, because I started to learn to integrate. How do I keep the high vibe and act in life? Because it's easy to get caught up in the drama of life, right? And lose your peace. I think the gift was that grace state was so strong that even if I fell out, I knew I could get back there. So now when I went through challenges, it wasn't as choking or scary because I remembered the grace state and I know I could get back to it. I knew it was, if my fears were coming up or challenges, it was because it had to come up to clear, because now I knew who I was. I knew I was this enlightened being, this source, this energy, this force, like that we could really be, do, or have whatever we want. But it's this human self, this ego, all this old programming that I have to work through it. I got to get a new perspective. I got to change the belief. I got to figure things out. And because that's all blocked energy if you're not working on it. That's why it's so glorious to have a vision or a dream, because it gives you the opportunity to let that stuff come up. Where does the fear come? What's it feel like? Why do you, because you're going to give two people can be working on the same goal and have two different experiences because of your, right? Your childhood programming, what your own personal experiences were. That's the point. It's really honoring your journey and what you need to do to align to those higher frequencies. I was in practice. I was out of the pain state. I was feeling most of the time pretty good, right? So I wasn't in that chronic state of pain anymore. I was pretty healthy. I was doing the gratitude journal. I used to journal and then I would write down my gratitude journal. I had two separate journals for about 3 years. And then I realized, why am I complaining in one journal and writing gratitude in another? It combined. I mean, that's such a metaphor. My day became gratitude after once I had the bliss. Like it all kind of accumulated in critical mass at that point, where my problems were laughable, and I only have things to appreciate. But I was doing that separate, and it kind of combined. I was doing. I read Autobiography of a Yogi. I remember, and I was doing Yogananda's lessons for about 3 years. So up to the gray state. I did the mission trips, Brazil and India. So there was that was the combination that was going, and I was practicing as a chiropractor, building my practice. So that was the combination that was going on as I went into the bliss state for the first time. And it forever reoriented my life. I knew that was normal. And so then when fears come up or challenges came up, I knew it wasn't as scary. It was easier to go through than before the gray state.
Thank you for sharing the details of that. So it sounds like, first of all, you moved out of the pain state. You wouldn't have been able to experience all this if you were still in pain. So I think that sounded like it was lesson number one. And then it was really utilizing your gratitude journal and your journal and combining the two and understanding that both those are your experience. And then what I really enjoyed about what you just shared as well is you mentioned that you were reading the autobiography of the yogi and you were on your mission trip and really diving into building your chiropractic practice. And then when you decided to read Rich Dad Poor Dad and start investing in real estate, I feel with friends sometimes they go, oh, if I could just meditate for, 4 to 5 hours a day, I wouldn't have any problems. And maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, but you live in this world and you need things like money. You need to have relationships if you want to live as part of, I guess, the society that we've built. And so I think it's combining all these beautiful practices that connect yourself with the world that we live in. So you learned that you need to invest in real estate to build wealth and to be able to have your version of freedom in this world. I think it's combining all of those different tools that's really helped to create a desired life. What would you say to that?
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. I remember having the thoughts, when you're reading your autobiography of a yogi, and I was doing his lessons, and it was very highly about the meditation state. And I thought, well, I guess I could be a recluse and meditate on a mountain and leave society, right? I mean, there was that option. But I remember he spoke about, I always knew, I don't know, I was intrigued by the energy of money, because even the people who want to do that, they're usually financially supported somehow. Like Yogananda needed people to contribute to his ashram financially. And I remember him saying, somebody who was one of his students, but who already was financially successful, and he made it possible for whatever Yogananda had to bring in, whatever, like, if it was a new ashram or a new school, he financially supported it. And he said he was someone who attained spiritual freedom and financial freedom. And that always, because I was already reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and that financial freedom concept. And I thought, man, if I was just raised like that from a teenager, I'd be in a different place right now.
Yeah.
Nobody taught me this. And I just felt like I knew at that moment, we're not here to hide on a mountain. Maybe some people are. That's fine. I'm not judging. Me personally, I really believe we're here to live full on out, play on out, and bring the spirituality, find that bliss state in your everyday life and create your desired life. Be passionate about what you're doing and inspired. That is the bliss state.
100% agree. Bold, underline everything you just shared there. And so I think as well, when people are looking at living their desired life, we touch on a couple of emotions that people will feel on this journey. You'll feel fear, you might feel anger or sadness. And the goal isn't to ever feel these emotions. I feel it to have a better relationship with these emotions so over they don't rule you and dictate your life. And I also think you need to experience those emotions to understand what the contrast is. You need to know what it's like to feel sad to be able to feel pure joy. What's what do you feel holds people back in these situations in terms of the emotional side of things? Do you do much work with your clients and addressing emotions and their ability to manage emotions?
I think the emotions are important. I think they have to embrace the lower emotions because that's what's keeping them stuck there. They're kind of almost being in a stranglehold with them. They don't want to go there, but it's overtaking them, right? Because they're afraid to look at them. So I do believe we need the full spectrum of emotion to have this human experience. That is how we create. Because if something, in order to know something feels good, you have to know something feels bad. Otherwise, you wouldn't know. So I think that's important. But, maybe people haven't experienced enough good emotion or positive or inspiration to trust, maybe to trust that that can stay. I know I have had this, like you always think the other shoe's going to drop. Oh, if life is too
Yeah.
good, then I'm going to have, then else is going to happen. Why I have to worry? So maybe if we learn, to be okay that you can handle what comes next. And that's just a frequency too, that you have to shift that lack, that, worry, that's still lower vibration. So I think that's why gratitude is so important because that's easy to do. You can be grateful for something or appreciate something without the fear of, I guess you could have fear about losing it, but basic things like the sun's going to come up or, if you orient
Yeah.
yourself to trust in, in what you appreciate or the beauty of life, that gives you, it builds that muscle instead of, because sometimes the muscle of fear and worry and hypervigilance is stronger than the other. And that's where, really diving into gratitude and listening to the inner voice and it builds the foundation for the more positive side. Maybe that's where the scale is in balance. So people are kind of stuck in this lower part.
100%. You mentioned that I was actually helping to facilitate a workshop yesterday. And one of the exercises that we did was we had a glass of water and we put some dirt in it. And we were asking everyone, how do we take our water back to clear? And there were some really great suggestions like spooning the dirt out or filtering it out. And what the answer that we're hoping to get to was you simply pour more water in and eventually you'll dilute the dirt. And the whole example was you pour more good stuff in to get rid of the shitty stuff. And so I really like what you've shared there because I think it's really easy to concentrate on the negative or to go, we need to address the negative. And sometimes, yes, we do need to address the negative. I don't really even like using that word negative, but instead of focusing on going, cool, how can we just put more good stuff in?
I love that. That gave me chills when you said it. I was like, that's the perfect. I love that answer.
And I'm interested to hear, how do you combine your knowledge of chiropractic in helping people to live their desired life as well?
I think living the desired life is the chiropractic message because I believe
Yeah.
my question is, I would look at people like, why do some people heal and some people don't? Why are some people, getting adjusted and changing their life and other people are still getting adjusted and stuck in the chronic state? And I really believe it's the inner work. That's why I think it's so important. And I think you couldn't do more powerful inner work than going after a dream, going after a goal.
Yeah.
How you want your life to look. How do you want your health to look? How do you want your finances to look? How do you want relationships, your mindset, and focus and figure out maybe 3 small, simple actions that you could do every day to work towards that goal. Because that's how you really get into the heart of what's going on within yourself.
Yeah. It's combining, and I'm sure you're familiar with this too, like the emotional, mental, and spiritual planes. And I have a similar journey with personal training. I've been a personal trainer for over 10 years and I was getting frustrated because I'd be seeing clients day in, day out, and they just wouldn't be getting results or they wouldn't be sticking to their program. I'm like, I can't solve this problem in the physical realm. There is some mental and emotional stuff going on here. How can I better support my clients? And so I found that I've been able to use the tools similar to yourself, that you've learned about the emotions, spirituality, and combine that with what you know about the physical body to really create true transformational results. And so we've talked a lot about living in the desired state. Is there anything else you'd love to share with the listeners about being able to get into the state that we haven't spoken about?
Now, I think it's really just starting with the journaling, getting clear on what you want, and then really just waiting for, if you don't know how to attain your dream, just be open to listen for guidance, be aware of messages coming in and writing them down, of giving yourself guidance. And I think it's really important to take your dreams seriously. Don't just say, "Oh, that's a nice idea," and put it on the shelf. I think it's really important to acknowledge that, because I really believe if you want true well-being, that's the journey. You can have an exercise routine, you can have a strict diet, but if you're not happy, you're not really living your purpose or feeling your freedom in other areas. It's meaningless. I see people so strict on trying to get healthy, but they don't, if there's the other pieces are missing, it just doesn't work. That's why they give up, or the diet doesn't work, or you know what I mean? They quit on their exercise routine because it's not in alignment.
Yeah,
That's why I think it's
100%.
creating healthy habits that work for you, that feel good, and working on whatever goals you have financially, or meeting people that uplift you, or doing things that lift your spirit, whether it's a hobby or you know what I'm saying? It's those pieces. It's really important, and it doesn't have to look the same for everybody. So you have to find the area that you really want to improve, or if you feel like you want the improvement, and just be open to the guidance that comes and be willing to actually take the action. It might be just small steps. It shouldn't have to be drastic. Just small steps, and eventually you'll get led to more.
That's so powerful. I love what you shared in that, and especially reminding people that definition of happiness and fulfillment will look different for everyone, and that is totally okay. It doesn't look a particular way. I think we think it looks a particular way, when in reality it doesn't. It looks however it needs to for you. And so on that note, you've shared some really great tools, but I'd love to hear if there's anything super specific, or if you'd like to take the time to remind the audience what's something super that they can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to move towards their desired life.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do is pick up that pad and paper and a pen, and just start journaling ideas, whether it's gratitude or how you want your life to look or what you want to change, and just be open to what guidance comes next. Where just be open. That's exciting, right? How can your dreams unfold in the easiest and aligned manner, and just be open to acknowledging it and acting on it when it shows up.
Spend the time dreaming. I love it so much. Thank you so much, Lynn, for joining us today. If someone is interested in learning more about what it is that you do and the incredible work that you've done, where can they find you?
Yeah, I have a website, creatingmydesiredlife.com. And you can email me a question. I'll get back to you. You can join my mailing list, and you can also find my book there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and experience with us. I so appreciate it.
Thank you, Miff. Thank you for having me. It was an honor to be here.
Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Actually You Can podcast. I so enjoy having you here, and I hope you've taken away powerful insights and tools that will support you to achieve your high-level results. Now, before you go apply all of this wisdom in your life, I would be so grateful if you are able to leave us a podcast review on the platform that you're listening to, or share this episode with a friend. Your support means that we can help more self-led, high-performing individuals just like you expand what's possible for them. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on today's episode, so please go on and shoot me a note on socials and let me know what you think. You can find me on Instagram at MYF'S. Now, go ahead and make those dreams a reality, because actually, you can.